Hey, how's it going everyone? It's Lee Halliday, and this video is all about feature flags. And the flag I'd like to feature today is Canada. Okay, bad joke. So what we're going to be doing is talking about feature flags, which is in simple terms a way to turn functionality on and off on your website. So imagine you're working on this multi-month project, and instead of sort of here's everything all at once, you could start pushing it to production in small little bits and hide it behind a feature flag so that you can control sort of when do you want to turn this on and unleash this amazing functionality to all of your users. So we're going to be creating our own feature flag system in Next.js. We're going to be learning how to do that with some custom hooks that we're creating, API routes, and we're going to be using Upstash, which is a serverless database for Redis, which is great because I've always found it difficult to find databases that work well with the pricing structure of serverless. So here it's free to get up and running, so feel free to check it out. But at the end of the day, it's just Redis, which gives you a nice key value store where we're going to be storing information about our feature flags. Okay, so let's get going by heading over to our Upstash console where we're going to create our first database. And we're going to do this in the free tier, which is more than enough for a lot of people if you're just building a demo or developing something locally. And we'll give it a name of Flipper. We'll put this in the US East region, and we are going to enable TLS and strong consistency. Strong consistency just makes absolute sure it's written everything to the hard drive in the Redis instance. So this will just take a second to get up and running. And what we're going to do is click Redis Connect, and don't use this line right here for our purposes. I've made some mistakes in the past. It will not work. And the reason it won't work is because we enabled TLS. And for TLS to work with the IO Redis package that we're using, you need this connection string. So come and copy this, sort of everything between these quotes. And it should have the double S here, which is standing for the secure Redis connection string. So then we can just close this. And we're going to go into our code base. So I'll give you a tour of the code base in a second. But first things first, we are going to go into a .env file. These you do not commit because it's containing your secrets. So don't push this up to GitHub. And it's not being committed because it's in here in the gitignore file. So we're going to call this Redis URL, paste this connection string in, and then we can just close this file. So tour of the code base. It's a Next.js application, and there's just a few packages installed. So we've got IO Redis for connecting to our Redis database, the typical Next.js and React stuff, and then SWR, which we're going to use to make an HTTP request call in our React client. I have also set up TypeScript. It's a pretty sort of standard, simple TypeScript setup. The only really thing I've done is I've added in this alias to the src folder so that I don't have to do like .. and sort of try to figure out how many layers I have to go back. You just sort of reference it with @source. Pretty cool. You'll see that in a second. And we're going to focus to start on this flags page. So this is where we're going to be building an interface to manage the flags that are in our system. So if we just start this app up, yarn dev, go to the browser here. Okay, so I actually want to go to flags, which right now just says this, and we need to get some flags into the system. So we're going to first focus on how do we create the API endpoint to enable or create a new flag. So to do that, we've got inside of pages API flags. We've got this square brackets key and then an enable file. So the square brackets key is a placeholder for a dynamic sort of variable that's going to hit up this API endpoint. So if we were to go to API, flags, login, enable, this is the key, that's the dynamic part of the URL. So let's focus first on just getting it into a variable. So const key will be a string, and it's going to be equal to request.query.key key like this. And you see it's freaking out a little bit. And the reason why is this here could be either a string or an array of strings. So to make it happy, we're just going to say this. And then we actually don't need this. It knows it's a key because we've told it, or it's a string because we told it so. If we want to make sure it's working, we could just put the key here. You can see it's picking it up as login. So now what we want to do is basically pass this key to a function that's going to create and enable this flag inside of our Redis database. So we're going to import from src flags. So remember this alias that I just mentioned. And we're going to import a function called enable flag. So this doesn't exist yet, but we're going to call it await enable flag, passing in the key, and then we're going to go implement that function. So src flags lives in src flags right here. It just got a dummy function. So what we're going to do first is create a connection to our Redis database. So we're going to say import Redis from io-redis. I used io-redis because it seems to work really well with promises and async await, which is cool. So we're going to say here, const Redis with a small r is equal to a new Redis instance, and we're going to pass in process.env.redis URL, which was that environment variable we set up. And now we can export the function that we were calling. So that would be export const, what was it called? Enable flag is equal to an async function that takes a key, which is a string. And then we want to do two calls to our Redis database. So we're going to await Redis, and the first way we're going to store our data is basically an array of all of the flags that we're tracking, all of the keys. Now arrays can have duplicate values. We don't want a duplicate here, so instead we're going to use a set, which is basically a unique array. It gets rid of any duplicates. So we're going to call a function called sadd for set add, and we're going to add it to the flags key, and the value is just going to be this key. So after that, we are now going to call Redis again, and this time we're going to set a value. So this keeps track of what are all the flags available. This one's going to keep track of whether one flag is enabled or disabled. So the key is going to be flag key like this, and then the value, or what we're going to use to represent enabled, is just 1. Set stores strings, so we're just going to store a string of 1 or 0 to say whether it's enabled or not. So with this in place, we can come back here, refresh this, it loads. Redis on Upstash is extremely fast, so it only takes like a couple milliseconds to do these two requests. You can call these two requests at the exact same time using something called multi, which executes these as an atomic operation. Why don't I just add it in as a comment, but we're not actually going to use it. Redis.multi, and then you say sadd flags the key, and then you do another command of set the flag with the key, value 1, and then you tell it to exec. And this will basically execute both of these at once. So I mean, we could do this. Might as well be a little bit more efficient. Let's make sure I didn't screw it up. Still works. So the last thing we wanted to do is basically get all of the flags back from a function that will be async called checkAll. This doesn't return anything yet. That's what we're going to return here. So we need to go implement this function. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is define const checkAll, and it's going to be an async function, receives nothing. But we first need to get a list of basically what are all of the flags or keys we have in our system. So const keys is equal to await get keys. So get keys doesn't exist, so let's go implement it. const get keys is equal to async. And we are just going to return redis.setMembers flags. And this will return all of them back to us. So if we were to just console.log the keys, let's return a value so it's happy. We do this. Oh, I know what the issue is. We never imported it here. There we go. So here we have an array of all of our keys. So now we want to get all of the values for all of those keys. So yes, you could call and get the value one by one, but Redis provides a way to sort of get all of the values all at once. So what we are going to do is we'll say const values is equal to await redis.multi-get. So this takes an array of keys to get all of the values for that. So what we are going to do is we are going to map the keys so that each one looks like flag key, like this. So now we could console.log our values. And see, you can see here, login is enabled. So what I want to do now is basically convert this from these two arrays, basically combine them into an object. And we're going to do sort of an intermediary, which is called a record. And records are, or sorry, not a record, a map. And a map is very similar to an object. You can get and set keys and values in it. And we're going to do that with a reduce. So we're going to say const mapped is equal to, so we're going to reduce the keys. How do we do this again? Okay, and then our callback function will be here. So our initial value will be new map. And since we're working in TypeScript, the type is going to be a record where the key is a string and the value is going to be a Boolean. Just like that. So this thing's freaking out right now, but we can get that fixed. So we've got our accumulating map as we're iterating over each key, and then we have the key. So what we can do right here is we can say, let's take our accumulator, we'll set a value, which will be the key. Sorry, the key will be the key. And then the value is going to be, what we also need is the index. So we're going to find sort of the corresponding value, which has the same index from this values array. So what we'll do is we'll say values at index, and we'll just check if it's equal to 1, like that. Doesn't like this. Let's just keep going. And then we're going to return the accumulator. Okay, so I screwed up something big time. Let's try to figure out what. Oh, or null. What we can just do is I must have messed this up before. String is not assignable to key and value. So the key string is not to string Boolean. Man, TypeScript. Okay, figured out the issue. Sorry, everyone. Okay, so I screwed up, figured out the issue. I set the type wrong on a map. You don't have to set it as a record. X that. You just have to tell it what the key is and what the value is. It's a Boolean. So everything's happy now. Now we end up with this mapped map, which looks like this. And we're going to basically return it as an object. So how do you convert a map to an object? You say object.fromEntries, the map. Just like this, we can get rid of our console.logs. This has flags and we output it. So there we go. There are our flags. We probably can just return them like this. There's our flags. So key value of all the flags in the system and whether they're enabled or not. That was quite a bit of work just to enable a flag. But now we get to go back to the front end and we're going to start showing them, and we're going to create the ability to enable and disable them. But before I even do that, I want to go into the flags index, and what I want to do is import check all from src flags. And then what we're going to do is get the flags in a variable, check all, and we are going to return the flags. So now anytime I want, if I just want to get a list of all the flags, I can just go to /flags and it will return me this same response. So with this in place, we can go into the front end and we can start to show all of these flags on the screen. So to do that, I'm going to import use SWR from SWR. This is going to help me do the HTTP requests. And what we're going to do is basically get these into a variable, so is equal to use SWR. And what we're going to do is pass /API/flags. And you need a fetcher function for SWR to work. So a fetcher function we're going to create here. It's going to receive this URL. So it's going to receive a URL as a string. And then it's going to fetch the URL, and then it's going to take the response and it's going to convert it to JSON. Just like that. So as a response, they give us data, which we're going to rename to flags. And we are going to also get access to an error. Cool. So what we can do is we can say if there's an error, let's just return sorry. Like that. If there's no data yet, no flags, we are going to return loading. If we get to this point, we know we have everything we need. So what we can do is go inside of a UL, and then we can say object.entries of the flags, and then map them. So each one, what we're going to be given is an array where the first thing is basically the key of the flag, and then the next one is the value, whether it's enabled or not. And we are going to output a list item. So our key will be key. And for now, why don't we just put the value in here? Actually, no, let's put the key. Perfect. So let's go see if this works. Loading. Here's our login flag. So let's handle whether it's enabled or not. So we're going to do that by, before the key, we're going to say, so if value, do a button. So if it's enabled, we want to disable. Else we want to enable, like that. So this one's enabled, so we want to be able to disable it. I've got these up here, so I can say disable is this emoji, enable is this emoji. And why don't we first handle how to disable a flag? So we're going to say on click, what we are going to do, this is going to be an async function. So the first thing we are going to do is basically we're going to call a new endpoint called disable. So we're going to say await fetch calling API flags at key disable, just like that. So this doesn't exist, so we need to go back and implement it. So what we're going to do is we are going to import disable flag and check all from SRC flags. And then what we can do here is we need to get access to the key. So why don't we just copy that line, and then we can await disable flag of the key. Then we will get the flags by calling check all, and we will send them as a response back. Perfect. Perfect, except disable flag doesn't exist. So let's go create that. So we've got here export const disable flag, which is async. It takes a key. And what it's going to do is, first things first, it's going to remove the key from our set. So we'll say redis.srem. So from the flag set, we will remove the key. And then what we want to do is basically await Redis, is it rem or del? No. We're not deleting the flag, we're just, so yeah, what am I doing? We're not removing this, we're just disabling. So what we're going to do is we are going to set the flag to 0. All right, that was easier than I expected. So just set it to 0. So we can come back. When you click this, refresh, it's now enabled. So why don't we go back here and then we can implement enabling. So on click, async function. We're going to await a call to fetch API flags key enable, like this. And what I want to do is not have to refresh every time that I sort of change one of these values. So what you can do here is you can say there's a mutate function, and in this case, if we just call mutate on its own, it just basically reruns this query and updates our data. So why don't we actually rename it to reload, like this? So then we can call reload each time we sort of change the value here. So now we come back, enable, disable, popping back and forth, toggling on or off our feature flag. So things are working pretty well. Why don't we put this in a span, like that. And then below, why don't we create the ability to delete completely this flag. So I've got my big X up here. And on click, we are going to basically do this again. It's an async function, except we're going to call remove instead. So we need to go implement remove now. So this is a process, but we're making some headway. So we are going to import remove flag and check all from SRC flags. So we need to get the key, which is going to be rec.query.flag as a string. And then we will await remove flag, passing in the key. Then we'll get the flags by calling check all, and then pass the flags as the response. So let's go to remove flag and implement this now. Okay, so we'll put this below disable flag. So export const remove flag is an async function that takes a key. And the first thing, this is what I mixed up these two. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the flag from our set. So we're going to say await redis.set rem. Our flag set, we're going to remove the key. And then what I want to next do is we're going to say we are going to delete the value from flag colon key, just like this. Okay, with remove implemented, we can come and try it out. So if we go into our flags page, click remove, no, nothing. Okay, what the heck? So this seems fine here. So if we go to the remove endpoint query, I wasn't getting the right query parameter. So now if we come back, remove, sorry. I think I know why though. It says sorry because it can't find any data, I think. So if we just change here, if not flags, maybe if flags is equal to undefined, or flags is equal to null. Ah, no, it was saying sorry. That means there's an error. That means wrong. Ah, okay. I know what we need to do then. So we didn't handle a case. What happens if there are no keys? So I think what we should just do here is if keys.length is equal to 0, we just return an object like that. We can't keep going. So now it works, but we need the ability to add a flag because now we don't have any, which sucks. So let's go back to our list here, and we're going to go down below and do a form. But before we do that, I want to just set up some data. So we are going to import use state from React, and we're going to track the new flag that's supposed to be created. Use state empty string like this. And then what we can do is come down here and create a form. So our form, what's it going to have? It's going to have an input of type text. It's going to be required, and we're going to give it the value of the new flag. And on change, we are going to get the event and call set new flag with the event.target.value. Okay. And then we're going to have a button beside that will just say add. And this will be of type submit. So if we were to come back here, now we get this beautiful form, but we have to handle the on submit. Oops. So that will be equal to, we'll get the event and we'll just say prevent default. So now what we want to do is basically call the enable endpoint. So we can get these two lines basically. We have to make this into async. Where is the key? It's actually the new flag state. And we're going to want to reload after, but we're also going to want to call set new flag and pass and make it back to an empty string. So enable it, which will add it, reload the data, reset the form. Those are what we're trying to do. So we'll add back login. It's enabled right now. So I actually think I messed up my things. So if it's enabled, we'll show what it is. Otherwise, we will not. Cool. So enabled, disabled, remove it, add it back as enabled. Things are basically working here. So now we get to, let's actually do some functionality with this. What I want to do is create a custom hook that will check whether or not the login is enabled. So if we go to the home page, it's got this login button, but maybe I want to disable it. For whatever reason, our login's down. Let's disable it. So if we go to the home page, what I want to do is basically import a custom hook we're going to create called use flag. So const, we'll call, we'll just check login enabled, or we'll just call it login, let's say. And we're going to call use flag, and we're going to check the login flag. And then what we can do is we can basically check if login, otherwise disabled. So this obviously doesn't work yet because use flag doesn't exist. So we're going to import it. Import use flag from src use flag. And now we have to go implement it. So we're going to hop down to use flag, get rid of this, and we're actually going to import use SWR again from SWR. And we need another fetcher function, so we'll just create this quickly. So fetcher is a function that will take in a URL and it will return, fetch the URL, then convert the response to JSON. Perfect. And we're going to export a function. Why don't we export const use flag is going to be equal to taking in a key or a flag. And the first thing we're going to do is basically call use SWR. And that's going to give us back the data. So it will be equal to use SWR. We're going to pass in our URL. So that would be API. We need to do some implementation too. So API and then flags and then our key and then check our fetcher function. And what we're going to basically just do is force this data into a Boolean. So whatever it comes back, if there's an error or not, I don't care. I'm just going to do the double conversion. So convert it to false, back to true, or the opposite, double opposite. And so this is a string like that. And this will tell us whether or not it's enabled. So we need to go implement quickly this check function. So we can just come back here. We need access again to our key. So we'll paste this in. We're going to import check1 from src flags. And then we're going to call it. So const status is equal to await check1 with the key. And it's going to return the status of this specific feature flag key. So check1 doesn't exist. Let's go create it. We'll just put it above check all, I guess. So export const check1, which will take in a key as a string. And then it's basically, it just wants to read the value from Redis. So we'll get this value here and we'll await redis.get the flag key. And then we're just going to say it's true if it's equal to 1. Everything else is false. Oops, check 1. So that makes my TypeScript happy. And now I can come back here and I can just say API flags login check. So it's true right now. So if we were to go to our flags page and disable it, so now it's false. So that means if we go to our home page, you can't log in right now, it's hidden. But if we go and enable our flag, now come back and you can log in. So took us a long time to get here, but basically right now we have a simple feature flag system that we can toggle on and off, and we can use our custom hook to control whether bits and pieces of our website are enabled or not. But maybe let's go one step further, and this will be the last thing we do. I've got this page called secret, top secret. what if I don't even want a user to be able to get here if it's not enabled? So first let's come here and let's create the feature flag called secret. And let's just disable it right away. So I want to redirect the user back to the home page if secret is not even enabled. So in this case, I don't want to do it client side. I can just do it server side since we're in Next.js. So let's go inside of this secret component right here. And what we're going to do is create a get server side props function. But it's going to be a type called get server side props, which is something we need to import from Next. And then that's going to be equal to an async function like this. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is basically check to see if our secret flag is enabled or not. So the cool thing is, because we created that check one function from src flags, we can actually just call it, since we're on the server, direct to go to Redis and check to see if it's enabled. So we can say the secret is equal to await check one secret, like this. So now what we can do is we can say if it's not enabled, we are going to return a redirect back to the home page. So we'll set the destination to the home page, and we'll say that this is not permanent because we may enable it at a different point later. This is still complaining, and that's because we need to return what happens otherwise. So at this point, our server-side function will run prior to rendering the secret page. It will check to see if the secret feature flag is enabled, and if it's not, it will just kick the user back to the home page. So if I refresh this, it kicks me back to the home page. Let's enable this. Let's go to secret again. Enabled now, and now we can access this. So this has been a pretty long video, but we've covered a lot of things. We've basically built our own feature flag system from start to finish. So just to recover what we've done, we've created an endpoint to basically get all the flags. We've created 4 other endpoints to check the status of one flag, to disable a flag, to enable or create a flag, and then to remove it, to completely delete it from our Redis database. So inside of our flags file, we sort of created all of these little mini functions who each sort of, they're the counterpoint to these endpoints here to do the actual work of talking to our Upstash Redis database. And we've got enable, disable, remove, a little helper function to get all of the flags, all the keys that are available, and then the ability to check one flag at a time or to check all of them at once. You could try to take this a step further, maybe check multi, where you could pass in an array of flags and it would give you their status back. It would be really easy to implement. Do I want to do that now? Yes, I do want to do it. Why not? Export const check multi. So what does multi do? It takes in an array of keys, which is a string, like that. So what we can basically do is just copy all of this code and paste it in here. So now what we can do is we can return check multi, pass in the keys, and there we go. Now you can call check all, which will pass all the keys to check multi, or you could just pass 2 of them or whatever. So that would save you, for example, on your secret page, say you wanted to also check the login. Now you could get back the status of secret and login. Oops, but it wouldn't be check one, it would be check multi, and these would be an array. Anyways, good times. Okay, so then we sort of handled the front end of this. We created the ability to manage our flags here, to list them, to disable, enable, basically working with the SWR package. And lastly, what we did is we tried them out. We took them for a test drive. So we used our client-side use flag hook, which will give us the answer back, and then we can choose whether or not to render things. But if you need it server-side powered, meaning the client shouldn't even visit a page, for example, you can do that like we did here inside of get server-side props to load it directly from Redis and just redirect the user or 404 or whatever you want to do as a response. Hope you enjoyed this video. I've got a ton of other use cases for Redis that I want to cover. API throttling, caching data. So if you're interested, let me know and we can cover those at a different point. Take care. Bye.